Hi, it's Mike Rutten again with the Olathe Fire Department, and we're coming to you with another just quick and easy Firehouse dinner. We're going to do a burst cherry tomato pasta. It's a real simple dish. What we're going to get started with is, you see here, we have a set of pans. We've already got some water boiling. The first thing we want to do when we're boiling water for pasta is we want to heavily salt pasta. I know that there's been some sayings in the back time you just add a pinch of salt to pasta, but pasta is pretty bland, especially the store-bought dried pasta. So by heavily salting your water that it cooks in, it will absorb some of that salt water, which gives the pasta some more flavor. So we'll make sure that we're getting our salt water nice, that it's going boiling before we add any of our pasta to it. Again, whenever you're cooking pasta, you want to do it to al dente, which means with just a little bit of a bite. You don't want it undercooked to where it's still super crunchy, but you certainly don't want to overcook it. With this recipe, it's pretty simple. We're just going to add some olive oil to a hot pan already. We've been warming this pan up on the stove. We have another pan here with some olive oil that we're heating up with just a couple chunks of garlic in there. And what we're going to use that for is that's just going to be a simple spread that we're going to put on any type of bread that you have at the house. You do that, stick your bread in there, warm it up a little bit, and then we'll top it with some salt. And we'll show you how to do that here in just a few minutes. So we've already washed all our ingredients, but the thing that we want to do is we get some nice fresh cherry tomatoes, or sometimes they don't have cherry tomatoes and you have to use grape tomatoes. Essentially the same thing. The grape tomatoes are a little bit smaller. We're just going to add that to our hot pan. And what we want to do is we're just cooking these things whole, and we want to cook them to the point where they start to burst. That will give us all the flavor of the fresh flavor of the tomatoes. It also keeps the tomatoes kind of really delicate and soft, and that's what we want. So we're going to cook this tomatoes down for a little while. We're going to keep our garlic olive oil mixture warming up. We don't want to overcook that garlic there, and we're going to move on to do our pasta here in just a few minutes. So you can see we got a nice hot pan, and we want that to happen. We want it to be hot so it helps to burst the tomatoes. We're also going to add some garlic and some onion to it. We've already pre-chopped up our onion. It's just a sweet onion, and we're going to add that to it. We don't want to add our garlic quite yet. We want the garlic to kind of go in last. Garlic will burn quickly, especially in a hot pan like this. So we're going to add that. We're going to wait a few minutes and let this cook down. And in the meantime, while that's cooking, we're going to go ahead and do our pasta. So we have a nice rolling boil here, and we just did some simple spaghetti. And it's a store-bought pasta. If you're doing it for two people, you do about half of a package or so is good for two people. For a family of 3 or 4, you could go ahead and cook the whole entire box, but for the most part, usually about half the box works well for 2 adults. When we put pasta in, you don't want to break it. A lot of people will break spaghetti, and spaghetti is actually made to be a certain size, and so to get an actual authentic spaghetti dish, you want to make sure that we don't break the pasta. We want to put it in there, let it stand on end, and then we're constantly stirring it for about the first 2 minutes of it cooking. What that does is it helps the pasta from breaking, being real gentle with it, but it also helps the pasta from sticking together. I'm sure you guys have all cooked a meal where you threw the pasta in there and you go to pull it out and it's one giant chunk. That's not the proper way to do it. We want to keep it separated. And again, by adding that salt in there, that salt helps to separate it as well. So once we get it all submerged, we're just kind of keep an eye on it, gently stirring it back and forth to get it all underneath the water so it can cook together, cook evenly. And you want to check what type of pasta you're cooking. Each pasta cooks at a different speed. So this is just a basic spaghetti. You can look on the side there. It tells you exactly how long to cook it for. It says till al dente or 10 minutes. So we want to make sure that we're paying attention to it, especially about that 8-minute mark. We want to test it. Like we talked about in previous episodes, is we want to test all of our food to make sure that it's seasoned well and it's cooked well. So we'll let that cook. One important thing that we kind of talk about when it comes to cooking and firehouse safety or house safety, home cooking, is we want to make sure that we're putting all of our handles away from or towards the stove, away from the kitchen. If this was sticking out like this and somebody ran by and knocked it over, this hot stuff's going to go all over the kitchen. Not only will it make a mess, but it's also going to could potentially hurt someone. So we want to make sure that all of our handles are facing in. We want to use the back burners as much as possible. We got a big pan here, so that one foot in the back. So you can see that some of our tomatoes are starting to wilt up a little bit, and that's good. We want those to keep cooking like that. We want them to eventually get to the point where they burst. So we're going to turn down our olive oil here, kind of let that browned garlic soften up a little bit, and continue to infuse into the olive oil. So while this is cooking, we can again come back here, pay attention to our noodles, make sure that they're not being overcooked. We want to make sure that those are cooking on a high boil. We don't want it to be like a low simmer or anything along those lines. While this is cooking, we can pull out kind of a measuring cup thing or a coffee cup that has some sort of a handle on it, but what we're going to eventually do is we're going to pull some of this pasta water out and set it aside. We want to have that pasta water. That's going to help kind of finish up our light pasta that we're working with, and it'll help incorporate everything together when we're all finished up. So we'll get that ready, pull that out. Our tomatoes are starting to break down a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and add our garlic. Again, we don't want to add it too early because we don't want to scorch the garlic. Let that kind of sit in there. This is a real simple dish, real light, be nice on a nice warm evening. Or even if you have some time, you could cook a light lunch. This would be perfect. We've carefully drained off the pasta. Again, you can see that it's starting to stick together a little bit. We did not rinse it. We want to keep some of that starch on the pasta. What that will do is help absorb some of this great sauce. So you can see that our tomatoes have started to burst, which is exactly what we want to do. This is our burst cherry tomato pasta. You can see that our onion's starting to get some nice color to it. The garlic's getting some nice color to it. So we're ready to move the spaghetti into the pasta, or into the sauce, I mean, the pasta into the sauce. So what we'll do is we'll grab a handful of it, a forkful, a tongful, if you will. And we don't want to add too much. We want to make sure that we're getting a good amount of pasta to sauce ratio there. So we'll start with that, and we can always add some more if we need to. What we'll do is just real gently kind of stir this spaghetti into the sauce. And what we're doing here is we pulled the spaghetti out about 2 minutes earlier than what the box suggested us cook. What that does is it allows us to finish cooking the spaghetti or the pasta in the sauce, and that'll help it to absorb some of these really good flavors. Stirring it together will help burst some of these tomatoes. So again, we talked about at the beginning adding the salt to the water while the pasta was boiling. We have not done any salt to this yet. And we want to make sure that you don't add salt until the end, or any pepper to the end, seasoning to the end, because you don't want it to be too salty. So we reserved some of the pasta water while it was cooking, and what we're going to do is we're going to add that back into the dish. And what that's going to do is all the starch that was in that water is going to help kind of just tighten up that olive oil that was in there, tighten up some of the spaghetti to the sauce there, and it'll just give us a real nice finish. Again, you can see that we only added about a half a cup or so, and we'll let that cook down just a little bit, help it kind of tighten up a little bit. And you can see this is a real simple dish. You can see how nice our tomatoes have kind of burst and all the flavorings mixed in with the sauce there. And while that kind of just simmers for another minute or so, we talked about the olive oil here that we kind of infused some garlic in. And we just have a piece of plain flat bread. You could even use a piece of crusty bread there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to stick this and gently put it into that oil just for a second to warm it up. We've let the oil cool down a little bit, so we'll let that sit in there for just a second. We'll let that run off a little. We just want a little bit on there, just a real light coating with that garlic infused. We'll pull that off to the side, and we're just going to hit that with some simple sea salt. So you can see that our pasta, some of the sauce is thickened up. You can see how it's got a real nice sheen to it. And whenever you serve a long pasta like spaghetti, you can just grab a hold of the middle and twist your tongs. Set it there in the middle. Get a little stragglers. Look at how nice and flavorful that is. And we can go ahead and turn that off because we're done cooking that. And what we're going to do is just kind of scoop some of these tomatoes out. Get some good tomatoes there. Move this off the heat so it's done cooking. And we're just going to take some nice, fresh, chopped basil. Put a little bit of that there. And then we have some fresh shaved Parmesan cheese. And you can buy this in the block, or you can buy it kind of pre-shaved, and we just grab some pre-shaved stuff. And we'll sprinkle a good amount of that there. And to your taste, you can add some pepper to it if you like it a little bit more spicy, but that's essentially our finished dish. Okay, so here's our finished grape tomato or cherry tomato pasta, and we saw that we just needed a little bit of fresh cracked pepper. Our flatbread that we soaked in the olive oil infused with garlic, and we hit that with just some sea salt. A simple, easy, fresh, inexpensive meal that you can do very quickly, either for a light dinner or a real nice lunch. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys stay safe out there. Again, from Olathe Fire Department to you guys, stay safe. Have a great day.